Good morning, everybody. Everything new under the sun. It is October 26, 2019, and this was a video I did about dinosaurs. Are they living today? Where did they go? Etc. And I speak about them being in the Bible and being in history and being known throughout many generations of humanity through the ages, through the last 4,000 years since the flood. And so this was a three-part series that I did back in 2018, and I thought it was about time to post this video again because there wasn't a ton of views on it originally, and I think it's very worthwhile. So if you have any questions about dinosaurs in the Bible, were they on the ark, etc., and are they around now, I think you'll find this very interesting. So thanks for watching, and continue. Good morning, everybody. Everything new under the sun. I put together a series of videos that I did a three-part series on in 2018 last year about dinosaurs in the Bible, recent sightings of dinosaurs. And we're going to take a look at that today, and I've put together, like I say, the three-part series that I had, where I go through the scriptural references to dinosaurs. Now, in the Bible, before the word dinosaur was invented, these creatures were referred to as dragons, and also in historicity, in historical documents outside of the Bible, these animals are referred to as dragons, and you hear about kings and knights slaying dragons. Well, this is what they're talking about, slaying these large animals, these dinosaurs that are still alive today even, and they're in the form of reptiles. Now, we know scientifically reptiles never stop growing. They're one of the few creatures, maybe the only creature that never actually stops growing in its lifetime. So if you give it 200 years, 300 years, if it was able to stay alive for that long, then it would grow as big as what we know of as the dinosaurs in days of old. And in fact, they're finding soft tissue in dinosaur bones these days too. Up in Alberta, Canada, they found soft tissue. Now, they explain this away and they say, well, must have been iron in the soil, and iron helped to preserve the soft tissues, etc. Regardless, the first thing you would think of if there was soft tissue found inside a bone is that maybe the bone wasn't buried very long ago. And indeed, that's the case. These large bones that we know of as dinosaurs, there may be recent buryings of such where dinosaurs have died off in the past number of couple hundreds years, the big ones. All the big dinosaurs have basically been killed off, although there may be some in some deep, dark jungles in Africa or Vietnam or these other places where man hasn't really gotten to. But regardless, we at least know that they were with humans up until very recently, and stories all over the place speak of them. So listen to this three-part series. Well, it's not three-part. You're going to hear it all in one part. It's about an hour and a half worth of videos that I put together in 2018. And I thought it would be a great refresher, a great video to get up here while I get back to the regular Bible prophecy stuff. There was some comments happening underneath a video about the dinosaurs. Are the dinosaurs millions of years old? How can the dinosaurs be millions of years old if the Earth is only 6,000? Well, the fact is that dinosaurs are not millions of years old. In fact, they still live with man. They're in the form of three-horned reptiles, the great bearded dragon that you can purchase yourself from your local pet store. Remember, reptiles never stop growing. That's a scientific fact. So if you allow them to grow 200 years old, 300 years old, they would be very large at that point in time. So without further ado, please stay tuned for this series of videos that I put together for you today. Thanks for watching. Good morning, guys, or afternoon, actually. I guess it is. Everything new under the sun. I want to take a look at today dinosaurs in the Bible, and more specifically, recent sightings of dinosaurs. Are dinosaurs alive today? Let's take a look at it from a biblical point of view. Do they exist? And were they with man, etc.? There's lots of questions surrounding dinosaurs. But what interested me in it was a recent number of videos that Kent Hovind has been doing. I think the last 4 or 5 have been related to basically all the extra information he has about dinosaurs living now on this earth as we speak, and sightings in the last 100 years. And there's all kinds of them. And the further you go back in history, the more stories of sea creatures and sea serpents and dragons, etc., there are in the history books. And of course, evolutionists, etc., put this off as people were crazy in the past and made up stories in the past, and everybody who's witnessed Loch Ness is crazy. The 11,000 people who have witnessed Loch Ness. Nessie, they're all crazy. They're all lying. They've all seen just a log floating in Loch Ness waters, etc. And so they're all lying, and so they all write them off. But there's been thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of sightings of various sorts of creatures. And interestingly, Kent Hovind let at the nugget that one of his friends apparently has found a pterodactyl in Arizona, in the state of Arizona, United States. And that's interesting. And there's looking to be a big reveal, and they're apparently putting it in a cage and going to put it on display or something like that. So we'll see what comes of that. But I just quickly did a search for recent sightings of dinosaurs, and I've come across some, I think, what are pretty interesting stuff. Now, this is by no means exhaustive. Definitely go search it out yourself. The thing is, there's too many articles, there's too many stories, there's too many people, eyewitnesses, saying that they have seen dinosaurs. But of course, we've all been brought up to believe that dinosaurs died out millions of years ago by an asteroid strike, which apparently killed off just the dinosaurs and no other large living creatures. It just made the dinosaurs go extinct, which is not believable at all. The Bible says something far more simple. The Bible says that man lived with dinosaurs, and dinosaurs were on the earth living with us. And basically, why we don't see them anymore, or don't see them often, is because they were big and bothersome. And man has mostly killed them off, like man has mostly killed off the buffalo and the fox in cities, etc. That's why you don't see predators in cities or where a land, where a location is very populated, like Europe, for example. Southern Europe and Britain. These are places where people have been and hunted for thousands of years, and so any big animal has been hunted to extinction, just like the buffalo for a large part of North America. So let's quickly see. I just want to take a look at some of the resources out there that you can search for yourself and get information about it. So this is an article from ChristianAnswers.net. So where does it speak of dinosaurs in the Bible? Well, it says, dinosaur-like creatures are mentioned in the Bible. The Bible uses ancient names like Behemoth and Tannin. Behemoth means kingly, gigantic beasts. Tannin is a term which includes dragon-like animals and the great sea creatures such as whales, giant squids, marine reptiles like plesiosaurs that may become extinct. Now, there's been lots of plesiosaur sightings. There was a story of the Japanese trawler that dragged up some big skeleton that looks like a big plesiosaur. There's lots of evidence that there's still plesiosaurs out there and sea serpents that were told by the sailors, sunk sailing ships 100 years ago. There's all sorts of stories about that. Fascinating Wikipedia article on all the supposed sea creatures and dinosaurs all around, like Loch Ness. The Bible's best description of a dinosaur-like animal is recorded in Job, and this is kind of the chapter that most refer to. In chapter 40, look at the behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength he has in his loins. And the image at the top there is of a dinosaur, of course, and of course the smaller animals are the elephant and the hippopotamus. And many people say, the creature it's speaking of in Job is either an elephant or a hippopotamus. But there's specific reasons why it can't be, and the main one is the description of the tail, basically. It says, what strength he has in his loins. That's the belly, and you see the brown-colored tail on the belly there, pointing out what he's speaking of, basically. What power in the muscles of his belly. His tail sways like a cedar, and of course an elephant has a tiny tail, so does a hippopotamus, tiny tails on them. The sinews of his thighs are close-knit. His bones are tubes of bronze, his limbs like rods of iron. He ranks first among the works of God. That's Job 40. The book of Job is very old, probably written about 2,000 years before Jesus was born, so about 4,000 years ago, our time. Here God describes a great king of the land animal, like some of the biggest dinosaurs, the Diplodocus and the Apatosaurus. It was gigantic plant eater with great muscles and very strong bones. The behemoth were not afraid. They weren't afraid of man. They did not need to be. They were huge. Their tails were so long and strong that God compared them to cedars, one of the largest and most spectacular trees in the ancient world. After all, the behemoth had died out. Many people forgot them. Dinosaurs were extinct, and fossil skeletons that are in museums today did not begin to be put together until about 150 years ago. That's when man forgot that they were alive, basically, although there were still sightings happening. But after that time, the people started being taught that dinosaurs became extinct, 60 million years ago, or whatever the date is now. But indeed, the Bible does speak of these. I want to take a look at this is Wikipedia here that you're looking at. You can go to Wikipedia, list of reported lake monsters. So these could be plesiosaurs or some other dinosaurs, but there's just a ton of them. So you've got the flags here, so you can see the U.S., Canada, United States, Lake Thunderbird, Lake Titicaca, Ballston Lake. These are all animals that they say are big, huge lake monsters. Ogopogo, the serpent, Old Greenie, Oklahoma octopus, Big Tim, Manipogo, Thetis lake monster, Ippopogo, that's in Lake Simcoe, Ontario, Canada. That's actually very, very close to where I grew up. And these are sightings that you can go search for these on Wikipedia. I'll put all the links in the description if I can. But there's just a ton of them. Lake Pepin in Minnesota, Lake Ontario, a couple of apparently lake monsters in Lake Ontario there. 2 listings for that. A ton of listings in the United States. Vermont, New York, Idaho, Utah, Pennsylvania. Now we have sightings in Costa Rica, Argentina, Cameroon, in the Congo. All these examples of monsters. Mokele Mbembe, that's in Cameroon. That's where we're going to talk a bit about that one. These are creatures that in Cameroon and Congo that the indigenous people say they have seen, and they even hunt, because they, if they don't hunt them, if they don't kill them, they actually kill their dogs and kill their children, etc. They're fearsome animals. You also think about the Native Americans who have the idea of the thunderbird at the top of their totem pole, and these are massive quote-unquote prehistoric animals like the pterodactyl and such that are still alive today, and if not alive today in the U.S., then alive recently enough that the indigenous have legends of them. This goes on. Europe, Norway, Sweden, Russia, legends in Russia, but the Brosno dragon, that's in Brosno Lake. And again, it doesn't have the date of these, but they're all over the place. Serpent-like creatures, it goes on and on here. Thailand, Asia, Australia. There's all sorts of, in Japan even, there's also sorts of areas around the world that are uninhabited by humans, and only have photos taken of them by the satellites, by Google Earth technology, effectively. So there's all sorts of areas where God could preserve his animals. Now, he doesn't need to, but I think it would be neat if God didn't let these animals go completely extinct, and that there's actually a kind of each of these animals somewhere. And even if there's no large dinosaurs, if you look at any small lizard, you can go to the PetSmart store today, the pet store today, whatever your pet store is called, and you can purchase lizards which have like 3 little horns on their head. Is that the Triceratops? Remember that reptiles never stop growing, so if you give them 200, 400, 600 years to grow without humans killing them, you have the dinosaurs. You just look at recent stories of the size of alligators and crocodiles in Florida. As long as man doesn't interfere, they get massive, 18, 20-foot long crocodiles in Florida, in the swamps of Florida. And there's a massive swamp in the Congo, which borders with Cameroon, which is apparently the size of a couple of states in the U.S. It's a massive swamp where no one lives because it's all swampy, and there's stories, modern day stories of dinosaurs living in that swamp, like today in 2018. So I want to take a look at a couple of articles here. This is one from January 12, 2018. This is from charlottestories.com, Charlotte, North Carolina. Flying dinosaur sightings are on the rise in North Carolina. This is 2018. Look at the date there. Look at the date, January 12th, 2018. If you didn't think we were living in biblical times, boy, this is a neat article to look at and say, wow, God is great. And it is possible that there are indeed creatures that the history, or that the textbooks say are millions of years old, that the evolutionists say are millions of years old. In fact, they're still with us. And like I say, wouldn't it be interesting if God actually preserved kinds of each of these animals for the millennial reign of Christ, where they're going to be allowed to prosper again and get real big like God intended it when he created the world 6,000 years ago. Wouldn't that be neat? Now he could bring them back from the dust as well. He could recreate them. But I think God is a good God, and he's more creative than that, if you will. And he's gonna wow us and actually preserve them through this. And I think there are lots of valid examples of actual dinosaurs alive today. So this is known as cryptozoology, the study of hidden creatures, basically. So North Carolina has been long home to legends of Bigfoot and the Lake Norman monster and lizardmen. But recently there's been a growing belief of modern pterosaurs living in North Carolina. Now this is kind of like the story of what I was saying, where Ken Hovind said one of his friends apparently has found some pterodactyls that he's going to capture. So pterodactyls are basically flying dinosaurs that have skin-like wings, kind of like the skin of on a bat, but aren't furry like a bat and aren't in the bat kind. And that's what the image there on the article shows you. Let me see if I can. It doesn't make it any bigger. I'll go to reader mode here. Cryptozoologist Jonathan Whitcomb sent out a press release about the creatures, including new pterodactyl sightings. That's right, pterodactyl sightings in North Carolina in 2018. This is an article from 2018. I mean, my mind is being blown. I'm so excited when I see this stuff. I think this is credible. When they do finally release real images of these creatures, of course, evolutionists are going to say either it's a hoax, or they're going to say, oh, it's amazing, one survived for 60 million years, or however millions of years it is. When indeed, all the Bible says is about 6,000 years ago, man lived with dinosaurs. They've been living with dinosaurs all along, and there's dinosaurs likely today. The Bible doesn't say that there's dinosaurs today, but it's only been 6,000 years since the creation of the world, and dinosaurs have been recorded in the history books in legend and indigenous history, up until the last couple hundred of years, and even more sightings than that have come out after that, of course. But we, with our modern technological scientific minds, have never given any of these stories legs to so that someone could actually verify them, because of course with evolution it has to be wrong, because these things were alive millions and millions of years ago, so they couldn't possibly be here now. Well, I think these articles illustrate a different picture. So this article goes on. He commented, my associates and I believe that there are non-extinct pterosaurs, what many persons would call pterodactyls, or flying dinosaurs. Cynthia Lee has been studying to become a veterinary technician, reported to Whitcomb an apparent pterosaur that she saw on Thursday, January 4th, 2018 in Raleigh. She was sure that the flying creature had no feathers, but it did have a long tail with diamond-shaped bulb at the end of it. And this is stories that I've heard similar with the diamond-shaped tail that I've heard from some of the stories that Kent Hovind was speaking of about the Arizona capture, etc. It also had a head crest. She also spotted the creature last week following Wednesday's snow. Lee was taking an Uber ride to work when she saw the same crested creature out the window. The driver did not see it. Her recent sightings in Raleigh weren't the first occasions someone in Cynthia's family had seen an apparent pterosaur. She told Whitcomb about a sighting many years earlier. My mother and uncle saw one too while they were playing outside of my grandma's house when they were really little, it says. They told Grandma, but she didn't believe it. I thought they were extinct. And that's what we're all being indoctrinated to think, that all these dinosaur creatures are extinct, when in fact, actually, the people are telling otherwise with eyewitness testimony that they're seeing and experiencing and killing these dinosaurs, for example, in Congo. So there's lots of sightings here. Here's, look at the purple areas. These are where there are 9+ reported sightings of living pterosaurs. The blue states are where there's 6 to 8+ sightings of living pterosaurs. The light blue is the 4 to 5 sightings of living pterosaurs. This was updated January 4th, 2018, this year. Incredible. Matt Cartmill, professor emeritus of evolutionary anthropology at Duke University, said, "It's not impossible for there to be living pterosaurs today, but it is highly unlikely," he said. "I can't believe that if there were living pterosaurs in North America, 3 centuries of naturalists, explorers, farmers, hunters, trappers, and biologists would never have run across a single specimen, living or dead. I'd rank it as being slightly more probable than living unicorns," which is, of course, he's making light of them, making a joke of it, "in Raleigh and Durham, but only slightly," he says. I think that's inaccurate. I think there's a lot of people who have reported all sorts of things, but anytime a story comes up, they're either not going to say it because they're going to be called crazy, because they've been taught to believe that dinosaurs were only around millions of years ago. And so they don't bring these stories out because no one's going to publish them. What newspaper is going to publish them outside of the Enquirer magazine, who people just write off as fake news anyways. But pretty interesting that there's people studying this still, and there's all sorts of reported sightings. Now, like I say, Kent Hovind apparently has a friend north of him. He's in Pensacola. Not Pensacola. He's in Alabama. I think it's the yellow state there above Florida. I could be wrong. I don't know my American geography. But he says he knows somebody who has apparently found a living pterodactyl in Arizona. So that should be interesting. I haven't heard any more of that. But these are recent sightings. This is coming out today in this day and age because of alternate news streams like YouTube, for example. Here is the Charlotte Observer, Charlotte, North Carolina. A dinosaur-like creature is reported on Lake Norman over the weekend. This is a picture. I think this is of Loch Ness. Yes, the body of the creature you can't see in the horizontal black area. His neck protrudes then up, directly up, and his head is cut off by the top of the image there in the black area. But that's a picture of Nessie. The latest in a sporadic series of monster sightings on Lake Norman has appeared on a website called cryptozoology.com. You can check this out. There's all sorts of interesting sightings there. Some real, some fake, maybe. But not everybody who sees these things are crazy. They've seen something. A 35-year-old Mecklenburg County man told Cryptozoology he spotted a dinosaur-like creature Saturday morning while traveling on a boat with friends. The man described this creature as splashing around in the water, 10 feet long and reminiscent of the mythical Loch Ness monster. It was visible for about a minute before dropping below the surface, he told the website. No photos were included on the July 10th article, which identified the source only as a local salesman. There's even a website called the Lake Norman Monster, so you can go to this and check it out. I'm just saying that there's sightings of these things. People see them, and of course, anytime anything's posted, they're just written off as, well, that guy's crazy because everybody knows they died off millions of years ago. Well, no, you have these eyewitness first-hand accounts of people seeing them. It is interesting that no one has yet to get a video of them, but I think people are so amazed, so wowed that it's just blows their mind because they were taught to believe that these were millions, had been extinct for millions of years. They don't get their cameras out. But I think it's pretty fascinating stuff. I'll put the link to all these here. This is from OurStrangePlanet.com. Modern dinosaurs. Why kids love dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, those exotic reptilian creatures that ruled the Earth for 300 million years. I believe the Earth is only 6,000 years, and I think there's a lot of very excellent evidence for that. And it doesn't make sense that it's millions of years otherwise. Continue to mesmerize generations of earthbound kids, and count me among them, for I was hooked tooth and claw from the beginning. And that's where the whole 3 millions of years is just assumed. It's just assumed that this is correct. Well, maybe the Earth is not millions of years old. Maybe indeed there's dinosaurs, and they still live with us, although there's not very many of them, because man killed them up, because they're threatening men, just like all the other grizzly bears, for example. There used to be bears on the island that I live, but there are no more because they hunted them to extinction on the island. So there's no more. They didn't live millions of years ago. They lived maybe 100 years ago, 50 years ago, until the people, the indigenous, and whomever else here shot the very last one. And that's what happened with the dinosaurs in most of the area. So this one starts to speak about the legends here. Slaying the dragons. Here's an image of a soldier slaying a dinosaur of some sort. And this is all thought to be, just story and rhetoric and, the stuff that they made up, like the never-ending large fish that you caught on your fishing vacation. But these are, on the other hand, maybe true depictions of what these people were actually doing. Throughout the ancient and medieval world, there are tantalizing evidence of dragons and dinosaurian beasts influencing art and culture. Why would that be? That's because these creatures were alive, and they're just recording what they dealt with in their day and age. Roman mosaics feature dragon motifs. Viking ships were often adorned with dragon-headed bows, said to scare away sea monsters. Reptilian forms depicted in art and myths of ancient peoples are found around the globe, but myths and legends are one thing. What about actual documentation? See, they don't accept any documentation from the past because that's just myth and legend. So I don't know what historical source they would suggest is good enough for actual documentation. I would think the only actual documentation they want is something less than 20 years old, maybe, I assume. In 1572 AD, an Italian peasant claimed to have killed a dragon that had been preying upon his cattle. The dead creature was reportedly examined by famous naturalist of that era, Eusebius Aldrovandus, on May 13, 1572. He obtained the carcass, thoroughly examined it, and had the dragon-looking form mounted for display on local museum. The medieval French town of Nurloc was supposedly named after the dragon slayer who dispatched a dragon-like beast, larger than an ox, that sported long, sharp horns. But again, even an animal examined by a naturalist, a skilled person in that day, who should know, the body, etc. This is being taken as a story because we don't believe it anymore. You have all these stories in 1883 of a Bolivian saurian, which is a Bolivian dinosaur existing. In 1907, a British army sent a survey to mark the border between Peru and Brazil and experienced dino sightings. So these are things 100 years ago, 150 years ago, all sorts of stories related to this. I'm not going to read all this, just to say that in the last 100 years, there's all sorts of stories of skilled people, intelligent people, trusted people citing these, but they didn't have cameras. They didn't have digital cameras, of course, but all they did was write it down. And of course, all the evolutionists just write off everything that was ever written down in the last 100 years as, they must have seen a hippopotamus or something like that. But I believe, indeed, there's pretty good evidence and recent evidence in the last 15 years, indeed, that there are sightings of dinosaurs, pterodactyls, and even plesiosaurs and other dinosaurs in the uninhabited areas of the Congo and Cameroon. Let's see, this is a story, this is from Exemplar .com. Dinosaur sightings. Are dinosaurs still alive today in Africa? And this is all there's a long list of cryptozoology websites which delve into this and ask the question and say, what is up with these sightings? And thankfully they're not writing them off. But evolutionists do write them off because they say, well, it just can't happen. It must have been something else. This article says, it's interesting to wonder what the world would be like if there were dinosaurs still alive today. And I think there actually are. It might have been depressing news for a 10-year-old, but now for the most of us, surely realize that it's probably a good thing for humans that dinosaurs aren't around anymore, as if they're stating it as if it's fact. In fact, I think the sightings and the evidence that will be coming out, I think in the near future, is going to prove that we actually still live with dinosaurs. There's just not very many of them alive. In fact, if it wasn't for the calamity that occurred 65 million years ago, which caused the death of the dinosaurs, see, they're just writing it off as impossible. So any evidence to the contrary is written off here because we know that they died off 65 million years ago. The prevalent theory is that the impact of a large object zooming in from space caused a global disaster that killed off anything larger than a rabbit. My question would be, well, how do we get elephants and other animals, hippopotamuses, if everything larger than a rabbit was killed off? I guess you're going to say evolution, right? And they all evolved from rabbits since the asteroid struck. I guess that's what they would say. Incredible. Are dinosaurs alive today? Some cryptozoologists believe that there are dinosaurs living today in remote parts of the world. They're not talking about birds, and they don't mean crocodilians. They're talking about real, live dinosaurs. It's unclear how this could be possible. I think the Bible makes clear where the earth is only about 6,000 years old, and all through history, man has spoken of and had legend of dinosaurs and living beside dinosaurs. It says here, but the fact remains that local tribes in equatorial Africa know of large, frightening creatures living in the depths of the jungles, most of which we haven't explored yet. When researchers show the witnesses pictures of different animals, some living, some extinct, they routinely point to images of dinosaurs and claim that is what they saw. I encourage you to actually go in and just Google recent sightings of dinosaurs. I think the evidence is actually increasing in these last days that there are actually dinosaurs around, which is incredible to me. How could tribesmen know nothing of other animal species located on distant parts of their own continent, have knowledge of dinosaurs that existed 65 million years ago, unless they had recently seen one? Well, the answer is they didn't exist 65 million years. The Earth didn't exist 65 million years ago. It has only existed for the last about 6,000 years. It is possible that in very remote and largely unexplored sections of African jungles, a few dinosaur species managed, or is it possible, I guess they're asking, did they manage to avoid extinction? Some researchers think there could be many, quote, prehistoric, how can there be prehistory? That doesn't even make sense, animals around today. But even though there are prehistoric animals around today, they're not going to give up their idea of 65 million years because that is what their religion of evolution is based on. But if dinosaurs are still alive today, that would be another class of amazing altogether. Many expeditions have ventured into the Congo region searching for tangible evidence of these creatures, only to leave disappointed. But these creatures are well known to locals, and there is plenty of eyewitness testimony to go by. I'm just going to cover this one, which I think is the most interesting here. Mokele Mbembe may be the most famous of the African dinosaurs, thanks to some recent attention from shows like Destination Truth. It lives in the Congo River Basin, eats vegetation, but is extremely dangerous because of its territorial tendencies. It will attack humans if they come too close, and is known to kill hippos if they invade its territory. Despite numerous expeditions to locate the creature dating back over 200 years, it is yet to be officially documented by science. And again, I don't know what officially documented means because lots of people have spotted it, written of it. So what exactly qualifies as being officially documented by science? I don't know. Does an evolutionist have to write a peer-reviewed evolutionary article for them to believe it? Because no creation is going to get an article peer-reviewed and accepted through evolutionary mainstream resource, lines, because the evolutionists can't accept that dinosaurs are alive today, because that would blow up the whole religion of evolution. Let's get rid of that. All these ads here. We don't need to see these ads. I wish I could go into reader mode here, but I can't. Witnesses describe Mokele Mbembe as having a large, heavy body like an elephant, but with a very long neck and tail. Some researchers, this sounds an awful lot, to some researchers, this sounds like an awful lot like a sauropod, a dinosaur. Sauropods grew to massive sizes, some possibly 200 feet in length, but even a small sauropod would be relatively huge compared to modern animals. Diplodocus is a type of sauropod many people are familiar with, and this or something like it, what locals are calling Mokele Mbembe, so some creature like effectively what you see there. And there's huge, thousands of square kilometers of area not explored on foot by humans, only taken photos of from satellites, for example, where these creatures could exist. And the resolution of the satellite imagery would not be enough to positively identify this. So there's large areas, large swaths of land, Congo, Cameroon, all around the world, on every continent probably, and Russia and Siberia. How much land is up there that people haven't explored? Northern Canada, how much land is up there that people haven't fully explored? Now, I'm not saying that there's a lot of dinosaurs, but the fact is, I believe there's a lot of sightings, thousands upon thousands of sightings of all sorts of dinosaur creatures. And is it possible that a few, could still be existing around the world? And I believe the answer is yes. I don't know how. They're still surviving. I believe that God, however, in his creative wisdom and power, I think he's preserving them and maybe even protecting them from man, and not letting these stories get out, maybe because he's going to allow them to survive through to the millennial reign of Christ, which we're not too far from. And maybe that's why sightings are starting to increase now as we get closer to the millennial reign of Christ, because he's going to have these animals on the other side, if you will, of the judgment that comes upon the earth. And like I say, he could grow these out of the dust of the earth. He made man out of the dust of the earth. He created them from nothing. So he could do that if he wanted to. But I think it would be more interesting if God actually preserved these animals through 6,000 years of man, didn't allow every single one of them to be killed. And so maybe there are some examples. And I think, actually, again, if you look at all the small lizards, reptiles never stop growing. So you give them a couple hundred years, those are your dinosaurs. So even if there's no large ones left, even if these stories of the large ones are gone, you have all these small lizards you can go down to your pet store and buy today in the year 2018. And if you could grow them for 200 years, they would become the size of a dinosaur. They are the dinosaurs. If you're looking for dinosaurs living today, look at the reptiles, the lizards that exist in your pet store. Go Google that. Check your science book. Reptiles never stop growing. Now, they do die after a while from various things because of the pollution of the world, etc., lack of proper food and nutrition and care, etc. But reptiles generally otherwise never stop growing. Their body never stops growing, even though they may die themselves. But again, if you give them 200 years in a proper environment, proper habitat, you have a dinosaur. So I think there's pterodactyls living today. There's this story. This article goes on to talk about a whole bunch of different animals that are spotted. Could dinosaurs be really living in Africa today? And it goes on. I'll put this link in the description as well. But anyways, guys, I just want to give you kind of a teaser. Check out the last, 5-6 videos that Ken Hovind has done. I think most of them are titled "Lies in the Textbook," but the last 4 or 5, 6 of them have been about all the extra detail about dinosaurs living today in our day and age, and I think it's incredible. I think to me, it's a wow moment, and it's a thing where I think, wow, God, you're awesome that these animals are likely even preserved today, and there's still examples of them. And it blows the evolutionary theory out of the water if dinosaurs exist today. So anyways, I'll leave it there, guys. I'll put the links in the description. Thanks for watching. This has been the Sunday video. Hope you appreciate it. Hope you find it interesting. And if I find some more content, I'll definitely bring it to you. But I think there's lots of evidence, and we should be seeing soon maybe photographic and video evidence of the pterodactyl. Dinosaurs did not go 65 million years ago. We're living with them today. There's not very many left, but there are some big ones left, and there's lots of little ones all over the place. Go to your pet store and look at the lizards. Look at the reptiles there, and envision what they would look like if they were 100 times their size, 1,000 times their size, and if they lived for 200 years or 300 or 400 years. Think how big they might be. Incredible stuff, guys. I'll leave it there, and maybe I'll do another video about the reptiles and the lizards that you might find in your pet store. That could be an interesting one, and just speculate on what types of dinosaurs they might be classified as if they got big. But anyways, guys, like I say, thanks for watching, and like the video, please share it, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. I was doing some more research on the pterodactyls, the pterosaurs, the real most recent sightings of dinosaurs, and so this is going to be like part 2. And I saw this particular one, 6 modern reptiles that look like dinosaurs. I was going through images of lizards, specifically looking for a triceratops, and we're going to take a look at one lizard which could very likely be the triceratops kind of the dinosaur kingdom. There's many really cool, neat, and wonderful lizards you can get at any pet store, PetSmart, any of the pet stores that you go to. You can buy lizards, geckos, all these sorts of things, and these are basically small dinosaurs. Now they say they only grow up to 12 inches, whatever, 14 inches. But given the right atmosphere, given more oxygen, given the right habitat, they could grow larger. A lot of animals only grow as large as the aquarium or the habitat that they're in. So if they're in a small fish tank, well, they're not going to grow very big because that's just how God made them. Fish are like that too. Fish have a certain limit. If they're in a fish bowl, they're only going to grow to a certain size, whereas if you put them in the ocean, they're going to grow a lot bigger. And that's just part of the DNA, part of the information that God built into fish, for example. So I would think that would be the same reasonable explanation, or at least one of the explanations why lizards don't grow to be very big. Although a lot of lizards do. There's a lot of massive lizards on tropical islands. I forget. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Anyways, they're very big. They're basically walking dinosaurs. I should look that up. And see where those are. I have it in my head. This is from thegrapevine.com. While the last dinosaurs perished some 65 million years ago, we know that's fake, about 6,000 years ago, we can see traces of what they must have looked like in today's reptiles. Although they note, they do say, evolutionists say that reptiles are not dinosaurs. But in this case, when you look at what dinosaurs might look like, certainly reptiles would be the most obvious thing, and they look exactly like that. Just smaller versions, effectively, of the larger dinosaurs. With their sharp teeth, scaly skin, and other characteristics reminiscent of the beasts that once ruled the land, sea, and air. Though some are small, they are no less impressive in appearance and reputation, and their larger cousins, here are 6 reptiles that could easily be mistaken for creatures out of Jurassic Park. So let's go to the first one here. And these are really amazing to me. So here is one that could be, give it 200 years to live and grow. Remember, reptiles never stop growing. Oh, I was going to pull up the wiki article, which confirmed that reptiles never stop growing. You know what? Let me just hide this for a second. Let me pull that up. Reptiles never stop growing, because I don't want you to just believe me. I don't want to just say something. I want you to see this with your own eyeballs. So here is IndianaPublicMedia.com. Let's see. growing. Okay, here is an article. This isn't exactly what I was looking for. Let's go ahead. I'll show it here. IndianaPublicMedia.org, which is true when it comes to animal growth. And I guess this is a generalization. A, reach a particular size and then stop growing. B, keep growing indefinitely. And C, all of the above. It says, if you've guessed C, congratulations. The skeletons of most mammals reach a certain size and then stop growing. However, many animals, including some mammals, keep growing throughout their lives. Kangaroos, for example, just keep growing. What would a kangaroo look like in 200 years? If it could live to 200 years old, how big would that be? But kangaroos keep growing until they die. Most fish, amphibians, lizards, dinosaurs, read dinosaurs when you see the word lizards, and snakes are also indeterminate growers, i.e. they continue to grow as long as they're alive. So if they're alive for 10 years, they grow to a certain size, as big as they can get in 10 years. If they're alive for 100 years, they'll keep growing as big as they can get it in 100 years. If they're alive for 200 years, well, those are the dinosaurs, effectively. They never stop growing. This is scientific proof. This is empirical evidence that, indeed, you give these animals enough time. If these weren't the dinosaurs, they would certainly look like dinosaurs because they would continue to grow over 100 years, 200 years, etc. And of course, we know that before the flood, man lived to almost 1,000 years old. So how big would the animals be if they were 1,000 years old? Why don't you regularly see dinosaur-sized lizards? What a great question. I don't even think this is not a creation website by any stretch. But why don't you see regularly see dinosaur-sized lizards, fish, or a snake? They're not dinosaur-sized. They are dinosaurs. They're asking the wrong question. Part of it has to do with the law of the jungle, so to speak. Simply put, most animals are eaten or killed before they get really big. Also, the longer the animal lives, the greater the chance it might catch some deadly disease. The Earth is winding down in terms of creation. We're at the end of 6,000 years. It was a lot healthier, not safer necessarily. While it was safer prior to sin, when all the animals ate vegetation, they didn't eat flesh, they didn't eat meat, they didn't eat each other prior to the fall. And so that's one example of, there wouldn't be predation. They wouldn't be eating each other, so they will be allowed to grow as big as they became in terms of what we know for the size of dinosaurs. There would be much less disease because the gene pool of all these animals was much more pure at that point in time. Of course, Adam and Eve, they were allowed to marry and procreate with their cousins and these sorts of combinations because the gene pool was still fairly clean. There wasn't a lot of mutations in it. But at some point, God said you can't procreate effectively with your sister or your cousins, and that wasn't because in and of itself is necessarily a bad thing, but because of the gene pool, because the gene code was breaking down and mutations were creeping in. That meant that it would cause a lot more harm and trouble for humans. So humans wouldn't last long if God let that keep happening. That's kind of one explanation of that. There's much longer, more thorough explanations of why that occurred, but that's not for this video. So they might catch deadly disease. In short, most animals die or are killed before they reach truly gargantuan proportions, but they didn't prior to the flood because they would have had higher oxygen levels with the water canopy. The earth would have been more pure. There would have been less chemicals, obviously. You wouldn't have radiation coming from the sun like it is now, because the canopy would have filtered out all the UV rays, which causes cancer and mutations and all these other bad things. So they generally had a much better habitat prior to the flood. But some came through the flood too, because Noah had them on his boat. They came in the form of tiny little lizards. Let me see here. That's not the one. That's not the one. They had them in the form of these little lizards, which we call them obviously, but they would call them baby dinosaurs. Look at the claws on his feet there. What would that be if he was 100 times larger, 1,000 times larger, because he never stops growing? What would he look like over after in a 100-year lifespan. So that's just you can look up that science anywhere. Reptiles, fish, snakes, they keep growing and growing. So like I said, give them 100 years, give them a pre-flood world, and yeah, that's your dinosaur. So you're looking at dinosaurs. You can buy a dinosaur at your local pet store. So this is pretty cool. This is the one that we speculate is maybe the basically a baby Triceratops or that kind of dinosaur. The peculiar Jackson's three-horned chameleon. What's its Latin name? Triceros jacksoni. Isn't that interesting? Triceros, and that's of course where the Triceratops gets its name from. The Jackson's three-horned chameleon is often compared to the legendary Triceratops dinosaur due to the three horns displayed by males, while adult Triceratops, however, topped out at almost 30 feet long. The Jackson's chameleon rarely exceeds 12 inches. And why does it rarely exceed 12 inches? Well, in captivity, it's usually in a fish tank, so it's not going to get bigger. It's not going to get too big for its surroundings. And two, you have all those other reasons. The habitat is not ideal. You have sun and cancer coming through. And you have all these, you have man hunting them, killing them. You have other predators killing them for meat, which, obviously you didn't have prior to the fall. And so you have a whole pile of things stacked against them, which means they're not as many of them are going to get as big anymore. But I believe that there still are. Like if you put this lizard in its natural habitat and far enough away from humans, likely it will get much larger than 12 inches. They say rarely, and that's why we rarely see large dinosaurs right now, but these are the baby dinosaurs, effectively. It says they are native to eastern African regions in Kenya and Tanzania, but thanks to exotic pet trade, have also established populations on the main islands of Hawaii. While most chameleons lay eggs, as we know dinosaurs lay eggs, the Jackson's chameleon gives birth to live offspring. So pretty interesting stuff. While it might appear attractive pet, the Jackson chameleon does not enjoy being handled, is easily stressed, and prefers solitude. Now, doesn't that sound like the stories you heard of dinosaurs preferring solitude and really getting angry when man gets anywhere near their territory, being very territorial? This sounds exactly like the dinosaurs' behavior that we hear from the indigenous people in the Cameroon and Congo and that sort of thing. So that would line up with what the behavior is of the dinosaurs that the indigenous people report. The regal desert monitor. Yes, the monitors. These monitors get real huge. Want to convince someone that dinosaurs are alive and well? Show them a picture of a desert monitor with its inquisitive eyes, streamlined body, and scaly, colorful skin. It's easy to imagine the reptiles at home in Jurassic World, as they are in Israel and other subtropical regions. While not the behemoths of their ancestors, they're not the behemoths of their ancestors because they're not living long enough to get that big. These aren't the dinosaurs aren't their ancestors. You're looking at a dinosaur right now. It just hasn't lived long enough to get big enough. Desert monitors can still reach lengths of over 6 feet. So, I mean, that's pretty big, too, when you think about it. But again, how old are these getting to? I don't know what the age of a 6-foot monitor would be, but you put them in ideal conditions, large enough, safe enough habitat where they're not going to get predated, where they're not going to get cancer or other illness and such due to entropy in our fallen world. Well, yeah, that he becomes a dinosaur, effectively. Preferred meals include mice, fish, birds, eggs, and if the opportunity presents itself, even other lizards. And you talk about the ferocity of dinosaurs, as always described. One last word of warning: do not get on their bad side. Desert monitors have been known to run up to 20 miles per hour for short periods of time, so it could chase you away if it didn't want you being there, and that would be pretty scary. Now, this one is a really cool one. The showy frilled neck lizard. I'm not even going to try and say what the Latin name is there. Remember the menacing Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park that had a colorful neck frill to make itself appear larger? Well, here is the baby dinosaur that they had in Jurassic Park. The frilled neck lizard, native to Australia, looks just like that, albeit smaller. Isn't that interesting? They're saying the exact thing. They're looking at the dinosaur, yet they're still explaining it away because they have their evolutionary worldview glasses on. Its brightly color-filled, averaging 30 centimeters in diameter, makes it appear extremely intimidating to predators. It's also capable of bipedal motion. A lot of dinosaurs we know of are always shown in the movies running on two legs. And so we have an example of lizards that run on two legs here. Huh. Again, they never stop growing. What does this look like after 200 years of living in an ideal habitat? Huh. It's also, oh, well, I already read that. And it spends roughly 90% of its life in trees, dining on insects and small vertebrates. But as it gets bigger, it would dine on larger animals, of course, to fill its belly. Unlike other newborns, frilled-neck lizard babies hatch immediately, independent and fully capable of using their frills to scare off predators. We can only imagine this display of tiny might is adorable. That's lame to say, to be honest, because again, if that grew for 100 years, 150, 200 years, how big would that animal, would that lizard be? And would we then class it as a dinosaur? I think we absolutely would. Let's look at the next one here. This is from thegrapevine.com. I'll put the links in the description. Here is the Komodo dragon. These are big beasts as well. They grow up to 10 feet long and weigh over 300 pounds. So if you don't think this is a dinosaur, I mean, what else are you looking for to understand that dinosaurs are alive today? Why would you not look at this and say, that is a living dinosaur? The largest living species of lizard, the Komodo dragon, I don't know why they say the largest. I guess this particular one just happens to grow fast enough during its lifetime to get up to 10 feet, whereas the other ones maybe grow a little bit more slowly. But none of these stop growing. They continue to grow. So give them 100 years, give them 150 years. How big is this guy? So 10 feet long and 300 pounds. As the dominant predators on a handful of Indonesian islands where they live, Komodos eat everything from deer to water buffalo and even humans. These things eat humans. Does that not sound like the legends of old and the dinosaurs? These are literally living dinosaurs. And this is just one example. I think we have even, I'm not going to say, well, not better, but we have examples of plesiosaurs and other things which look more prehistoric to us because we're not used to them. The Komodo dragon lizard we're a bit more used to because we've seen it. So using its long forked tongue to smell as far as 2.5 miles away. Is that why we don't see these animals often, us humans, because they can smell with their tongue up to 2.5 miles away. They know where we are. They know what direction we're coming from. They can quickly hide and get out of sight before we're anywhere near it. So it makes sense that maybe God gave them the tools to get away from humans and to get away from us so fast. We don't even know that they were there because they smelled us 2.5 miles away. Due to its incredibly slow metabolism, an adult dragon can live on as few as 12 meals per year, consuming as much as 80% of its own body weight at each sitting. When threatening, they've been known to throw up the contents of their stomachs to reduce weight and flee more quickly. So this particular kind of animal is listed as vulnerable, apparently, due to poaching, loss of habitat, and harmful tourism. And that's exactly what has happened to all the other dinosaurs that used to roam North America, that used to roam Central America, etc. But there are still some living, as you heard about the story of the pterodactyl. So here's another one. Look at this one. What would this thing look like if it was 100 years old, 200 years old, 300 years old, and in a habitat where they weren't being predated, weren't being killed by humans? This is the intelligent wood lizard, located in a remote region of the Peruvian rainforest. I'm just going to call it the wood lizard. Is one of two recently discovered wood lizards. This colorful lizard features impressive dorsal spikes. What would those spikes look like if this was, if he was 100 times his size, maybe the size of a horse? Those would be formidable, huge spikes. Oh, just like we see on dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, all those videos, all the images that we see of dinosaurs. That's exactly what we see. Just multiply the size of this animal, 15, 20, 50, 100 times. and an eye that reflects the intelligence of the velociraptor dinosaurs featured in Jurassic Park and its sequels. Fortunately for humanity, males only reach about 12 centimeters in length. But again, why aren't they stating that, you know what, this thing never stops growing? What if it grew for 100 years? How big would it be? It would be a lot bigger than 12 centimeters. Because the 5,000 square mile Cordillera Azul National Park of Peru, where the lizards are found, has been so poorly explored, it's hoped they are but a fraction of new species awaiting discovery in the region. And again, when you look at how much land has not been explored, 5,000 square mile park in Peru, poorly explored, how many other much larger dinosaurs are there waiting there? We just haven't seen them yet because of the tree canopy, etc. I think it's an exciting time to be alive, and maybe before the Lord returns, we're going to see some of these large-size dinosaurs. There are probably only a very few left because of habitat, because of predation, because of all the people killing them because they're basically eating humans, just like the monitor lizard there. But there may still be a few big ones left. The last one from this particular list, this is the deadly saltwater crocodile. Now, this is an animal that we're used to seeing, and so we don't look at it as a dinosaur. But again, these don't stop growing. What happens when you have a 30, a 40-foot crocodile? That sounds like a dinosaur to me. Nicknamed living fossils, saltwater crocodiles have largely remained unchanged for more than 100 million years. Of course, that means, when you read millions of years, turn that into, get rid of the million and just say 100 years. 6,000 years, I think, is the max. The largest of all reptiles, they reach lengths of 23 feet and weigh in at more than 2,200 pounds. Why do they say they just reach lengths of over 23 feet? They should say a time span there. How many years is that over? If they were 100 years old, how big would they be? Each massive head features 64 to 68 teeth, with some more than 3.5 inches long. Naturally, crocodiles have a tendency to eat whatever they can surprise, with everything from birds to kangaroos, turtles, small sharks, and yes, humans on the menu. So you're talking about these man-eating dinosaurs, the dragons that they had to slay 150, 200, 400 years ago in the past, when knights used to go out and slay the dragon. They were literally slaying these beasts who were already eating humans, and that's why they had to kill them off. That's why most of the dinosaurs are gone now, because they've been slayed because they were killing mankind. So that is pretty cool. Now, this particular video here, I'll put the link in the description. I'm just going to play it here. But I think this is fascinating. And again, I can't vouch for the veracity of this. I don't know. Is it real? Has it been faked? Of course, all the comments are that it's been faked. But this apparently shows a pterodactyl. Let me go ahead and... I don't think there's any sound to it. It's about a minute long. To me, just looking at it, I mean, that looks pretty neat. To me, that looks real. To me, that doesn't look fake. I think that looks like a graceful bird flying, basically. And then when you see it almost flip over, I wonder if that's because he spots the guy with the camera and he's looking at it. Look at the bulb on the back of this bird's head. Again, is this photoshopped? Is this something else? This is a zoom in of it. Look at the wingspan of that there. And again, Kent Hovind knows someone who actually has apparently caught a pterodactyl. So this is known as a pterodactyl or a pterosaur. I'll put the link in the description. You can check it out. Let me know what you think. It could be fake, but on the other hand, maybe it's real. There's thousands of accounts of it being real. But of course, all you see in the comments are just that, this is fake. Look at this guy. Cough, fake. It has to be fake if evolution is true. And so they fight tooth and nail to say it's fake. Fake. Wing flaps look unnatural. I mean, they'll make fun of everything. Even if you had a video of a hippopotamus, people would think it's fake just because they don't see it very often. One person said it's a guy in a costume. I mean, they're just being ridiculous. They're just completely discounting it. But there you go. This is another article. This is livepterosaur.com. And this is a book, apparently, May 14th, 2018, sightings of living pterosaurs in New Mexico. There's a whole book this guy made. I'm writing the 4th edition of my nonfiction, Live Pterosaurs in America. This is from Jonathan Whitcomb, the same cryptozoologist as I read about in the last video there. So he's basically expanding and improving the book here. Can you tell me more about the local news report of a flying animal? And these are what people have said. It was the local news 13, a CBS channel. If you look on the internet, it was KRQE. The story went like this. A man alone in the Dona Ana Mountains, a mountain range just north of Las Cruces, was walking during the day in the desert along the base of a mountain. He saw two of the pterodactyl-like creatures. They were sitting on the ridge top watching him. They then flew towards and over him. He described them much the same as I did. He said it was about 10 years ago. I'm not sure what inspired the local newscast to do the show last Thursday. And this article has lots of sightings. I saw two pterodactyls side by side flying past a tree. But what struck me was that it had a giant-sized beak and wings had no feathers. These are people, apparently eyewitness accounts of these creatures. And this is, latest information. That's pretty fascinating stuff. I'm going to leave there. I just wanted to kind of show you the first bunch of animals here. I think this is pretty incredible. And, it's something you should get out there and read your Bible about the dinosaurs and understand that God's creation is here. These creatures are all around us in the form of lizards. Give these lizards 100 years, 200 years, and you have what is described as dinosaurs throughout the ages. All nations and peoples, indigenous and non-indigenous, throughout the ages, throughout the last 6,000 years, have legends, history passed down by word of mouth, written down in storybooks about the slaying of dragons. And the Chinese have a dragon on their calendar. They have 12 different animals on their calendar. One of them is a dragon. The other 11 are all real animals that we know today. Why would they put 11 real animals and one fake animal on their calendar? That's because dinosaurs are real and they had real experience. And dinosaurs were common, relatively so, and relatively known up until probably 150, 200 years ago. At which point we had basically killed most of them off that we would ever see. And then, of course, that's when the theory of evolution came into the picture. And then the media and the people pushing evolution, the religion of evolution, had to make sure that they squelched any articles about dinosaurs. Because if dinosaurs are here today, that causes a lot of trouble with evolution. That means evolution is not true and is not happening. Because these were supposed to be alive 60 million years ago, and the fact that they're here today, they're just smaller in the form of lizards because they keep growing their whole lives. That means that evolution is not true, and that means that there is a God that we answer to, and he's a creator God. He created all these kinds. They're still around, and I think it's incredible that God has kept them around. That I don't think we are able to make any kind of animal go extinct. I think God has all the gene code intact, and he's just waiting for the millennial reign of Christ to let these things grow up back to what he intended them to be: big, beautiful animals roaming the earth he created along with us, not in competition with us. So we won't have to kill them in the millennial reign of Christ, because we're all going to be eating vegetables and grass, etc. We're not going to be eating meat anymore at that point in time. So that's just a little video, kind of part 2. And it was a long part 2. I'll have to put these videos together at some point in time. But I think it's important enough that you get out there, you look at these animals, tell me these are not living dinosaurs. And if you understand that these never stop growing, well, that's a no-brainer to my point of view. If you allow them to grow for 100 years, that's the only question at this point. If they continue to grow forever, why aren't they living to 100 years or 200 years old? And the answer is, well, it's because we live in a post-flood world, and a lot of things have changed, and that's a topic for another video, but there's a lot of information out there. If you have questions, comment on the video. I'll try and answer it. Contact me. Search it out on Google. What was different about the atmosphere prior to the flood, and what is entropy, and why is the world winding down, and why are we dying and getting all these diseases, it seems, in these last days? Well, it's because the world's winding down, and the Earth's history is culminating. And the Lord's returning soon. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there as part of the second half. I just wanted to show you some of these pretty cool images. You're looking at the Triceratops there. Keep that in mind. And get one of these as a pet so that you can show everyone that comes to your house that dinosaurs are alive today. Hey folks, everything new under the sun. Well, this is kind of part 3 of our Dinosaurs Alive Today. And I just saw this article. I wasn't planning on making multiple parts to this, but I saw this article on ICR.org, which is Institute for Creation Research, and they have this evolutionary tree, I guess, on the wall. I guess this is an evolutionary tree. What the evolutionists say, the tree is for the dinosaurs. But indeed, this article goes on to suggest that all dinosaurs are basically kind of the same kind, and I would agree for the most part. First thing I want to bring your attention to is the lizard that I spoke of the other day. This is, let's see, what is the name of this one? This is the jack-horned lizard. Let me go back here. Jackson's chameleon, I guess, is the name of it, and this is a common lizard that is alive today. National Geographic has this. This is all over the place. You can get one of these for your kids. The scientific name of this guy is Triceros jacksoni. And if we go to the images, you can see a lot of images of what are the same animal, basically. That's what you see there. So let's go ahead and over here. Now I want you to focus on what the horns look like on this particular creature. And remember that lizards, reptiles, snakes, and even most fish, if not all fish, continue to grow forever. As long as they're alive, of course, their body never stops growing. Whereas for humans, we stop growing after after our teens or whatever. I don't know what the scientific age that we stop growing is, but we stop growing at some point. We don't keep getting bigger and bigger, but reptiles do. And so this, look at this skeleton up here, the skull, rather, of a Triceratops. See how the horns are bending over like that? I want to bring beside this, and look at any of them, for example. These are 3-horned skulls, or a bunch of them are anyways. And I want to bring this image to the front here. And you can tell me if you think there's similarity here. If you give this particular creature 200 years to grow because they never stop growing, what do you think it's going to look like? Look at the horn arrangement on this. And you can go to, I'm sure you can find other chameleons, other lizards that look even more like these dinosaur skulls. If you were to take a skull from this chameleon, I bet you it looks similar, except in miniature, of these dinosaurs. Now, as it gets bigger, the bones are going to be doing different things. They're going to be growing out in certain areas. Maybe that's why you get the wing at the back of the head. Maybe after 200 years, that particular piece of the head keeps growing. And so we don't see it in the Jackson lizard. Although if I was to search, I'm sure you'd probably see more. Actually, you can see in this image here, you can see the top of the skull going out even further. So you give it a couple hundred years, and this end of the skull, yes, you can see my mouse there, this end of the skull would keep growing upwards. And wouldn't that look similar to these Triceratops skulls? Well, let's get into this article quickly here. A recent paper published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B may have inadvertently confirmed what the Bible revealed to us all along. Kinds only produce their kinds. So I'm just suggesting this kind of reptile basically grew up to be the Triceratops and the various other dinosaur types, at least in this kind of dinosaur. Ceratopsian dinosaurs are horned varieties that include Triceratops. I'll just keep this up here. Include Triceratops and Styracosaurus. These dinosaurs shared a common body structure and seem to only differ in their ornamentation. And that's exactly what we see with the lizards. You go over here, you look at these lizards. They have similar, 3 horns, but they look very different, each of them. If you look at the images, some don't even have horns like this out the top, but they have horns at the kind of the back of their head. And you just search 3-horned lizard, and you'll come up with all these photos on Google Images. These are all living creatures today. This new study, it goes on to say, by Andrew Knapp of Queen Mary University, London, and his colleagues from Raymond M. Alf Museum of Paleontology in Claremont, California, and the Natural History Museum of Utah in Salt Lake City, attempted to determine why ceratopsian dinosaurs have so many different varieties of horns and frills. Again, you talk about the frills. Look at this dinosaur. I guess his skin is peeling. You have these other dinosaurs with lots of spikes. Look at this guy with the jagged edge on his back. Doesn't that look like a dinosaur? You give him 200-300 years to grow, and that would be a Triceratops. And some of these other dinosaurs that we know of. So it's well known that the number and sizes of horns and frill ornamentation on the ceratopsian dinosaurs vary. Pull that guy up again. Considerably, these ornamentation differences may help establish social status, or could have been due to differences in the sexes. Some paleontologists have noticed that the hatchling ceratopsian dinosaurs vary considerably. Noted that the hatchling ceratopsians, I'm reading the wrong place there, all looked very much the same. It wasn't until they matured that the horns and frills took a distinctive character. So what they're saying is these animals, these lizards, look the same right now, but as they matured, as they got older, the horns took distinctive character. They grew different outcroppings of the head as it grew, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years old. A news post at Scientific American noted it's something of a running joke that horned dinosaurs are just different heads on the same chassis. That's because they're all from the similar reptile kinds. The new study adds actual data to the impression, meaning that either there was a greater evolutionary push to evolve vastly different horn arrangements, or that bodies of these dinosaurs were under what's called a stabilizing selection, the biomechanical traits of their bodies being more resistant to change. The reason for this pattern remains unknown. Of course, the Bible answers this. Well, they're all the same kind. That's why they look the same, and they also have the same designer. Knapp and his co-authors suggested several possible explanations for rapid diversity, because, and I'll add my own comment here, because they don't want to recognize that, well, maybe intelligent design, maybe creation is the actual answer to this. So they're coming up with all these other theories to explain it, but they have absolutely no evidence of this. You understand? The scientists have no evidence that what they're dreaming up is accurate. Most studies of sexually selected ornaments and weapons in extant taxa focus on sexually dimorphic examples, and there's no clear evidence of sexual dimorphism in Ceratopsia or any other dinosaur clade. These differences can simply be explained as variations within the same species or kind, just like dogs have vastly different size and shaped breeds. And that's kind of the answer. Creation scientists believe that the horn and frill differences in many of the ceratopsian dinosaurs do not necessarily establish separate species or even different sexes. Rather, these differences can simply be explained as variations within the same kind. Evolutionary scientists are prone to name any noticeable difference as a new species, and they're going to jump on that because they want evolution to be true. But it's not. It's just the same kind of animals showing different shapes, sizes, but all the same information is there. They all have 4 legs, they all have a head, they all have 2 ears, they all have 2 eyes. I'm thinking of the dog kind. You have big dogs, small dogs, but they all have 4 legs. They all have ears, they all have eyes, they all have tongues, they all have teeth. They all have the same things. They're just different sizes, different shapes, etc. Could it be that God simply loves diversity in his created kinds? And yes, I believe so. Again, you look at this for yourself. Go to Google Images, search 3-horned lizard, match this up to known skeletons of Triceratops and 3-horned dinosaurs, or horned dinosaurs of any stretch, and you can see that the skull would grow over time and start to look exactly like what we know the dinosaurs. Well, not that we know what they look like necessarily. I guess we have good indication. but what we can imagine they look like based on the skulls. And you have a ton of different skull formations and horns, etc., on the different skulls. But again, you look at the different lizards, and we have all these sorts of lizards as well. The same variation is in the lizards or in the reptiles. So you have all this existing. I should note, look at the ridge. Let me pull this image down. Look at the ridge here in the top of this particular lizard. Are there maybe holes beside that ridge that maybe look like these skeletons down here? Holes, you got the center ridge and the edge ridges, and that's what we see, the edge ridges of this this particular lizard. I mean, you can take this and look at it all day and look at the skull of these things and say, you know what, that's exactly what that looks like. If you give it 100 years, it looks like the top of one of these three-horned lizard skulls, which has the three distinctive lines. And I've just taken one lizard and one type of dinosaur, the name escapes, the Triceratops. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking of the Stegosaurus because one of these other ones looks like a Stegosaurus. But anyways, like I say, you can go to these yourselves, the Google Images, and you are looking at dinosaurs. These are small dinosaurs. They had to start out small. They don't start out at the size of a bus. Dinosaurs never started out the size of a bus. They start out as little reptiles that continue to grow over 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, and this is where your dinosaurs come from. So I'll put this link in the description. Science is coming around to the fact that indeed these are all the same kind of animal, and what I think is more cool is when you look at the known skeletons that we have, the skulls in this case, you can actually match them up with living lizard skulls. If you just look at the shape of the head and the outcroppings on the back of the neck of these lizards, you can see the shape of that dinosaur skull forming, albeit very small at this point. Like I said, you give it 100 years, you give it 200 years, and what do you have? You have a dinosaur, just like we see in terms of the variation and the design of the skulls. So, guys, I'll leave it there. More evidence, part 3 of the series. Let me know what you think. I think this stuff is fascinating, and that's why I put it out there. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.